let's run through some viewer mails.
Oh.
We're going to run through them. Dragon 4201976.
Oh, as long as it's not 977.
Apparently, we incorrectly we talked about it as character from Ash's Rise of the Phoenix Born. I think we said Diana, and the name is Demona.
Oh, my mistake.
Demona Odin Star. Sorry. Whatever.
I'm sorry. I haven't made a deck with her yet, so I'm not really used to thinking.
Big deal. Thanks for your corrections, though. Keep sending them in. Next up, Shatsy Shell. Now, that's a good name. Shatsy Shell's got something for us.
He's going to be saying that name for the rest of the night.
Has some good, actually a really good tip for a Betrayal at House on the Hill. You know how we complain about your little stat boards, how annoying the clips are that always fall off all the time. Their advice was to put tape on it to make the boards thicker.
Oh.
And then they will
actually, that's really nice because it also laminates it so you don't have to think about tearing as much.
Yes, so
that's actually a very good idea.
Good tip. If you have any more tips like that, that's a life hack.
Board game life hacks.
Last week we talked about political games, or I think it was last week. Rico Cordova says that's a difficult. He finds things a difficult subject to build a game
when we were
around.
talking about like how close and I forget what game it was.
It was the suffragette game.
Right.
Yeah. He thinks he lists Twilight Struggle as an example of the best example, which I think is interesting because that's also very far removed from the period the game takes place in. But he's impressed at game designers who can make a good game out of these topics. Most games he can see, says he can figure out, okay, see how they went about creating this game. Political and historical games, nope, I'm always baffled. And I get it's true. It's like it's a much different headspace than just the kind of a fantasy or any other milieu.
Well, yeah, and actually, just recently, I think it was this week, they uploaded another one of the videos I watch a lot. Extra credit. I'm pretty sure I brought them up multiple times on here. Mm-hmm. But they just talked about a video game that came out. I think it was called Revolution 19, about the revolution in Iraq, and they said they called it what they think is one of the first successful documentary games, and how they think they did it right, which is interesting because I think a lot of the points could be brought over to a board game, and some of the things they brought up was like the character you were. You were a news reporter. You weren't one of the central main characters. You can't change the line of history. You're sort of stuck there. But you still had to interact with your father and your brother was a soldier, I think they mentioned, and stuff, and how the war was affecting them. And
it's like the historical fiction of
right.
Yeah.
So sort of maybe that's the way board games go. Not as much playing as I'm the United States, you're the Nazis, but more
right, you're just a bystander.
Yeah.
Or you're Johnny Tremaine.
In that way, you can't really change the rules of history, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. But
it's definitely check it out if you're interested in what we're talking about here, because I think they are very connected.
Extra credits, on YouTube. Falcon Ash K listens to our first episode of our D&D podcast, Myths of Malokus. Thank you for listening. Mm-hmm. He's very interested, and he asked me a question.
Oh, do I need to cover my...
No.
Okay, good.
He says, what is the name of the world that your campaign takes place in? That's a great question. I haven't named it. Let's hold the contests for people to be able to name it. To be honest, the way we've kind of been playing it is that I think it's like an alternate version of the Forgotten Realms.
Well, I just assumed it's Earth 616. This is Forgotten Realms 55906.
Right, because you guys looked up stuff for your backstories, and some of them explicitly reference cities and gods that are in that realm. So it sort of feels like that should be how it is. Because you didn't really tell us
too much how to shape us. That was the other thing. You gave us too much room.
Right. Well,
but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I do think by making it like I jokingly said, but in all seriousness, Forgotten Realms 55955 is because there's other scenarios, and you could just be okay, we're going to do a demon scenario and do something it's closely connected to the book. Was it Into the Abyss, I believe, for example? Mm-hmm. But you could be okay, I did make some changes in my world,
Right. Well, one of those Dungeon Master podcasts I was talking about a few weeks ago, they recommend for building a world, you start small. Build a town, and so I think the Dungeon Master book is the same thing. Then you expand slowly. Then you can be like, oh, this is a country. Now it's a continent. Figure out where this stuff is. So
I mean, and that's one of the reasons I know the way I wrote my story. If you haven't listened or not, I'm a dragonborn who's from a dragon.
You got to hear him.
From this city. I believe I mentioned the name of the city, but not much outside of that. But I gave you this name of the city and the whole reference and sort of like the culture behind it. So if you ever needed to reference it, whether it was like we actually visited there or maybe like we opened a trade route there, I don't know. Like there's so many things. Right. Like you have at least something to start building on.
Yeah, we played ours very loosey-goosey. I know a lot of people, the Dungeon Master will tell them beforehand, like, here's the world, this is where you can be. We did it very freeform. But off the top of my head, just going, if I had to name it, I think I'm going to probably call it Glormpus.
I thought we were having a contest. The contest is over! Congratulations to Jonathan Estes.
That's a strong possibility. It's not set in stone. Glorpus, give us your suggestions.
I would like to see you come up with a name that doesn't sound like it's from Rick and Morty.
It will be hard. It will be hard. And finally, Cut Purse says...
Uh-oh. I don't know. This guy sounds shifty.
They sound shifty.
Or girl.
Or girl. They say, I will miss Doomtown Reloaded, which just recently ended, if you didn't know. I loved everything about that game. One thing I would like to point out, though, was that me and my friend would go 5 rounds before we check for a winner. That way we could get out dudes and deeds and make for some good shootouts. Maybe that should have been a rule in the game. One of the things we talked about was how this strategy of going all out early on was so very strong. That sounds to me like a decent idea as a house rule, so that to kind of punish that early game lead, don't check until a certain amount of time. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends, because the few times we played, which we'll actually talk about, we did play Doomtown, which we were going to save for this comment.
Yeah.
And that one we didn't actually play with the fast ones. But the few times I played with the fast guys, even if they didn't win in the first turn, they won in the first turn.
They still had such a good lead, it didn't matter.
They crushed you in the first turn.
Right. Huh. Okay.
So like it's not even a matter of checking if you win or not. It's just having the resources within the few turns. Like, I mean, the game we actually played. You played as the circus people, whose name I'm forgetting.
I forget also.
I played as the ranchers, and our friend Mark, who actually owns this, plays as the Eagle Warden, his favorite group.
Right.
And those groups, in particular, the Eagle Wardens and the cattle ranchers, are very turtly and slow. So this is the first time he actually got to play the Wardens right.
Right, without the other people going after him.
Well, in particular, my brother.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I played a game with outlaw dogs in it. So there was cheating running rampant.
Right, yeah, nobody cared. Except for, I think, one time you caught me on it.
Yes, I did.
And it was interesting for me, because this is the first time I really played a full game of it with knowing the right rules.
Yeah.
And I kind of...
You got screwed up. But the problem is you played a deck.
Well, this was also... It was kind of... I said at the outset, I just wanted, let's start playing. You can walk me through it as we go. So I didn't really... Because I didn't want to spend a long time learning the rules, so...
You didn't get a great opening hand and stuff.
So it's my own... I don't want to... It wasn't a bad thing. It was my own choice that I didn't fully understand things until later on in the game. So I was really kind of learning.
But you still came in, like, you were still holding your ground.
Yeah. It is weird, though, because, like, I felt weird. I understand why people say there's a learning curve, not just in how to play, but just understanding the strategy, because it's really so different from most other games that I've played. It's like this weird system of going, I want to put these guys out there or not?
Because to me, there's so much more emphasis, like when I'm thinking of other big card games, whether it's like, Magic doesn't even ignores this 100% completely, but let's look at maybe like Netrunner, Pokemon, like there is some emphasis on the placement of cards, like whether it's your...
Is there in Pokemon?
Like, because you have your bench and then your main guy out. But it's and Netrunner, it's sort of like your it's really, which only matters for the business, your servers. But really, that doesn't matter. But in this, placement is huge.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes a difference of whether a guy joins a shootout or not. And to me, that's what makes it different. Plays more like a board game.
Right.
Than most card games.
But it is definitely cool. I mean, I enjoyed not knowing what I was doing.
No, and I mean, after playing it, and definitely the cow company is interesting. I still prefer my law dogs. I love just
Yeah, I thought the circus people were the coolest conceptually, but for whatever reason, from just bad draws maybe, I just didn't find
You didn't get any
the combos I should have got going.
Cantrips,
Hexes, yeah.
hexes. You got none.
I got like 2,
And they were like, move a guy. Like they were worthless.
So it was kind of disappointing. I didn't really get to use them to their fullest. But I definitely would like to try other people next time, or even them again, just to see how it goes.
But I definitely would love to hear what you guys actually opinion on and what decks you play. Like I said.